good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're all doing well. We are talking Delphi case today. Not talked about Delphi for a couple of days since I did my little experiment in the woods with my iPhone 6S. If anybody saw that video, we're going to revisit that today. We're going to talk about Ron Logan. Ron Logan is the man whose land Libby and Abby were found on, and Ron Logan is back in the news after an explosive filing from Rick Allen's defense team. Rick Allen, of course, has been convicted now of Abby and Libby's murders, and he's been sentenced to 130 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections. 130 years, can you imagine? Well, I've been saying since the trial, since all this came out of the trial, that the timeline that the state has proposed, particularly pertaining to Libby's phone data, excludes Rick Allen. The state's theory, supposedly Rick's confession, does not make sense when you look at Libby's phone data. So the state's own theory, based on Rick Allen's supposed confession containing information that only the killer would know, and then the state's own analysis of Libby's phone data just don't make sense. Unfortunately, the jury weren't able to put it together because that would have cleared Rick Allen. It would have cleared him. However, it doesn't exclude Ron Logan. I'm not happy with it still, but that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to say a couple of hellos first and a couple of thank yous. Thank you, Aussie TV, for being a member for 26 months. 26 months. And we've got a super chat from Krista. Thank you so much for the super sticker, $49.99. You are so incredibly generous. Thank you so much. And we'll say a couple of hellos as well. Oh, we got Kenny back. We got Kenny back in the house. Kenny was calling us all shameful the other day. Shameful for saying that Rick Allen is innocent. That's what Kenny was saying to us the other day. All right, well, bro, Richard Allen is not excluded. I mean, if you negate his interrogations and statements to Doolin, you mean Dullard, he is the timeline via his interrogations. That statement makes no sense, Kenny. Did you read it back to yourself? I am negating his interrogations and his statements to Dan Dullard. Why am I negating his statements to Dan Dullard? Well, because they weren't recorded. We've only got Dan's interpretation, Dan's statement about what happened. He didn't record his interview with Rick Allen. So, no, not including that. I'm negating his interrogations, which you absolutely should as well, except you're not going to, because in his interrogations with Liggett and Mullin on the 13th of October, 2022, and his interrogation by Jerry Holman on October 26, 2022, he continually and forcefully denied any part in the girls' murders. He is the timeline via his interrogations. Well, his interrogations don't give us a timeline for the reasons I've just outlined. Alibi is the crime scene. Do you actually understand what alibi means? Alibi is not the crime scene. Okay. Moving on. Hello, Holly. Hello, Cleveland. Beth. Teresa. We Are Dust. Mandy. I've already said hello to Krista by the very generous super sticker. We've got Journey Takes a Trip, Jadzia, Rake's Funny Farm, CW, good afternoon to you, M. Osland. We've got, who else have we got? Mimi. We got Sarah, we got Jazz King, we got Danny. Okay, I'm going to stop there. But welcome, everybody. Hope you're all well. All right, the Ron Logan stuff is wild. It's totally wild. Totally wild. Just let me get rid of my flames, and we can then start this whole shindig going. Just for those completely lost about what on earth's going on, it's this that is created. Let me just make my screen a little bit bigger for you. It's this that has created the furore about Ron Logan. This is Rick Allen's defense team's motion to correct errors, which sounds fairly innocuous. You know, you think when you think of errors, you think of, oh, there's some typos, or there's some minor changes that need to be made. No, this is explosive stuff. Not just for the Ron Logan stuff either. Like the whole thing, you just go, whoa. We haven't had a response from Judge Gull yet. And we haven't had, I guess she's waiting for the state to respond. So I guess we need the response from the state first. And then maybe Judge Gull will make a ruling. Her choices are, she can vacate Rick Allen's conviction completely. She has the power to do that, which means he'll get a new trial automatically. Vacate the convictions doesn't mean he gets off with it. You're just vacating the conviction. So you've still got the charge. But it means a retrial. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen before an appeal. She can hold this for hearing, in which case the state has got to provide the evidence and counter these claims. Or she can do nothing and just deny it without hearing. And I kind of think she'll deny it without a hearing. Nick has 14 days to respond. Yeah, there is a time limit. Don't hold me to 14 days, but he's got some time to respond, and then she's got some time to issue her order, or not. If she doesn't issue an order, it will automatically be deemed denied, and then Rick Allen's appeals team comes into play. So he's already got appellant lawyers lined up. So if the motion to correct errors fails because Judge Gull denies it, then it's down to his appeals team to take up the mantle and start that process. So it'd be, in the first instance, that's then a direct appeal to the appeals court. All right, so I'm not going to read this all word for word, but in May 15th, 2017, so just 3 months after the murders, an inmate in Newcastle Department of Corrections, where Ron Logan was being housed at that time, because he'd been sent to prison because he was out on probation, he violated the terms of his probation, and he's sent back to prison. So he's in the same pod as someone called Reese Davis. Reese Davis then rang the tip line and gave a tip on May 15th, 2017. And this tip was in the Orion database. This tip was available to the state. It's been available to the state since May 15th, 2017. It was in the discovery. Why it wasn't mentioned at trial, The Lord only knows, obviously, because it didn't suit the state, because it's exculpatory to, it's pronounced Ricky. Apparently it isn't. According to Michael Osbrook, who's actually done some work for Reese Davis, it's actually pronounced Reese. Because I was saying Ricky at first. And then I think somebody told me that it was Richie. It was like an Italian spelling. But I'm going off what Michael Osbrook said, given that Michael Osbrook alleges to have done some work for him. I'm going to say Reese. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. All right. So there's obvious reasons why the state ain't going to bring this up. There's obvious reasons that now is very clear why was it April? I want to say April of 2024. Was it April? Was it that far back? It was a while ago anyway. The state's motion in limine to stop might have been August 2024. I think it may have been August 2024. Anyway, doesn't matter when it was. At some point before the trial, the state put in a motion in limine to exclude the defense from mentioning any of the third-party suspects, including all of the Odinists that have been mentioned in the Franks, including Kegan Kline and Tony Kline, and also Ron Logan. And I was a bit confused about why they'd included Ron Logan, because the defense has never mentioned Ron Logan, in the Franks hearings. So I was curious at best. I was curious, a little bit curious, as to why the state had also included Ron Logan. Well, now I see why. Because not only was there a confession that wasn't taken seriously, supposedly to someone called James Hass, when the two shared a cell in Carroll County Jail. They were both in Carroll County Jail like for a small amount of time. James Hass was awaiting trial for murder, so he'd been parked in Carroll County Jail. Ron Logan was in Carroll County Jail for a small amount of time, and they shared a cell. And James Hass wrote a letter to Carroll County Court saying that Ron Logan had confessed to killing the two girls, and it wasn't taken seriously. Well, this confession that James Hass wrote about had no detail to it. So I can kind of understand why that wasn't taken seriously. There's this guy, he's awaiting a trial for murder. He's writing in, and the majority of the letter, honestly, was about his unfair trial. But anyway, Reese Davis's claim doesn't suffer from that. Reese Davis's claim is very strong. Reese Davis's claim is very detailed. And there's no way that Reese Davis made this up, because this included details that someone who'd been incarcerated, like since before the murders, it included details about the crime scene that Reese Davis couldn't possibly have known. Whereas Ron Logan, well, it becomes very interesting. Because he appeared to know stuff about the crimes that only the killer would know. One of the things was that there was the use of a box cutter. And none of us knew about the box cutter until the trial, when the forensic pathologist who conducted the autopsies on Abby and Libby said that he believed that the weapon was a box cutter. And in this confession to Reese Davis, that Reese Davis rang in as a tip, he claimed that he used box cutters. Logan confessed to Reese step by step of killing the two girls. Logan told Reese how he burnt his clothes in a fire pit and where it was located. We don't know whether anybody went to check the fire pit. The location of this fire pit, where was it? Did anybody go and check it? We don't know. Used box cutters and struggled with one of the girls and thought drops of blood from his nose ended up on her clothes. So is that why he burned his clothes? And is that why, because he thought there was blood spatter on his clothes, and why Libby's clothes, well, Libby's top, ended up in the creek? It's interesting. Reese also advised that he killed the older girl first. More specifically, this is the handwritten notes taken by the first sergeant from the Indiana State Police, someone called P. Hansard, wrote, and these are almost illegible. Almost illegible. The defense team has had a go at deciphering them. So this is First Sergeant P. Hansard's handwritten notes from June 21st, 2017. So a month after this tip came in, they actually went to the prison to interview Reese Davis, and these are the notes. So it seems to say, and this is what Ron Logan told Reese, that Logan was walking and talking about knowing one of their dads. He decided to walk with them. One of them wanted to turn around, grabbed the youngest's shoulders, said it's okay. The eldest freaked out. So obviously the eldest is Libby, the youngest is Abby. One said something about calling the police. The fact that it's been called a sexual attack wasn't true. He wasn't going to rape them. He was paranoid about his probation because he was on probation, which he ended up violating anyway. They got him for that. Felt like he crossed the line when he grabbed the youngest one. So he started talking to them, and something about it was ironic that they should have been in school. He knew one of their moms from waitressing in a bar, which is true. Abby's mother worked in a bar. He asked them if they wanted to go and see some animals, because Ron Logan had a bunch of animals at his house. And they were, at first, he was walking with them. At first, they were willing to go and see the horses. He told them he had rabbits as well in the barn. They walked through the trail in the woods. And then the eldest, Libby, got paranoid and said she didn't want to go. However, Abby still wanted to go and see the horses. So he's touched Abby's shoulder. Libby's freaked out. She turns to help Abby and then started doing something, either looking, kicking, whatever. He grabs Libby. She hit him on his nose. Good on her. In which time he then pulled out a box cutter from his pocket and slit her throat. Hit an artery, and she's dying. He takes Abby somewhere. Doesn't say where, but he ended up having to kill her as well. So Libby died immediately. Seemed to have been left in the woods along with her phone. So that would be 2:32, because the phone didn't move after 2:32. But Abby could have been alive for many hours afterwards, if we're taking this to be true. But he ended up having to kill her as well, or else she would have told on him. Then he left again and came back later in the evening when the search was going on. He then, in the late hours, tried to move Libby to an area where she wasn't going to be found. But he couldn't move her. Burned his clothes, etc. Two other girls knocked on the door and asked to search property. Felt weird. If he said no, let them take off. Got hold of family member and got out of area. And he didn't participate in the search. He didn't participate in a search. And he did lie about his alibi. In 2022, the Murder Shit podcast released a leaked, quote unquote, leaked search warrant that had been signed on March 17th, 2017. So just, well, only a month after the murders. That was written by an FBI special agent, Nicole Robertson. And in that search warrant, which was the probable cause for a search of his entire property, the FBI at that point being under the impression that Ron Logan may have committed the murders. So they wanted a search of his entire property. So that search warrant was the probable cause for why they believed that he committed the murders. And in that search warrant, it's very interesting. And I read the search warrant the other day in my live stream. So go and check that out if you want to hear me reading and commenting on the full search warrant. His phone ping data showed that he was in the vicinity of the bridge at 2:09. Bear in mind the BG video was taken at 2:13 into 2:14. His phone ping data also showed him in the vicinity of the crime scene at 7:56 p.m, so at nearly 8 o'clock in the evening, and then later at about 10:12 or 10:16, something like that. Bear in mind that the defense are claiming, based on the state's own analysis of the phone data, that headphones were plugged in to Libby's phone at 5:44 p.m. and unplugged at 10:32 p.m. Yet the phone wasn't moved. So the phone didn't take any steps, but headphones were plugged in and then taken back out. It's intriguing. It's intriguing. Now, at the end of my live stream, the other day, I said I was going to go back and listen to some news reports from just after the murders, and I did. I've got a few. I'm going to play them. They're only short. They're only like 2 minutes each. And then we'll talk about the timeline in relation to what the state said Rick Allen did versus what the state wanted to hide that Ron Logan confessed to. Because, you know, if Ron Logan's confession doesn't fit what we know about the crime scene and doesn't fit what we know to be known facts, then we can't take that confession seriously, even if it contains things that only the killer would know, like the box cutter. We still have to view it with a lot of suspicion. You know, you can't say, oh, well, Ron Logan confessed, therefore he must be the killer. Because if you do that, you've also got to say, well, Rick Allen confessed, so he must be the killer. Any confession that's made, given that most confessions that are made are false, people confess to crimes for all sorts of reasons. You know, some kind of weird fantasy, or for attention, or because they're psychotic, you know, because they're being coerced. There's loads of reasons why people confess to crimes that they didn't commit. I know, that's another thing. Broken Goth Doll. Ron Logan lied about his whereabouts at the time. Yeah, it's coming up. He tells a reporter that he wasn't there. He tells the reporter that he wasn't there. But we know he was there. We know he lied about his... He rang his cousin to give him an alibi, and the cousin initially lied to the police and then took that back and said that Ron Logan had asked him to lie. So the cousin was no longer an alibi. And Ron Logan's own phone data that was tested by the FBI puts him in the vicinity of the bridge at 2:09, exactly the same time that Abby and Libby were there. Abby and Libby were on that bridge at 2:09. And Ron Logan's phone is in the vicinity of the bridge at 2:09. And then the fact that he went back twice to the crime scene is a bit weird. It's very weird. But if his confession does not fit the known facts, we have to shrug our shoulders and say, well, maybe that was just a coincidence. Maybe all of this is just a coincidence. What I'm going to argue is the state's own analysis of Libby's phone absolutely 100% excludes Rick Allen, but it doesn't 100% exclude Ron Logan. That's what I'm going to argue. All right, but let's play these first. The links to these, I've got 4 clips lined up, each like 2 minutes, all from the time of the crime. This is actually from 2022, but this is when the Murder Shit podcast released Ron Logan's search warrant, and in this they include the interview that they did with Ron Logan in 2017, and then the others are kind of from breaking news from the time. So this is Inside Edition. The links to all of these are in the description already.
A shocking new twist in the hunt for the killer of those 2 Indiana teenagers 5 years ago. It centers on this man, Ron Logan, who owned the property where the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German were found. An FBI search warrant has just been released, revealing they searched Logan's home. Logan has been the focus of attention from day one. Inside Edition Stephen Fabian interviewed him in 2017.
You just cannot believe this terrible thing that happened to the community and the families actually happened here on my property in my backyard.
He claimed he had an alibi, buying tropical fish 20 miles away.
I was not home during the time that all this was happening. I was in Lafayette.
Yeah.
You weren't though, were you, Ron? You weren't though. He thought he had a tight alibi. Oh, thank you, Barbie's to Blitz, for the $20. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, I'm digging. I'll reach Australia by the time I've stopped digging on this case. So he wasn't there. He was 20 miles away in Lafayette buying fish. And then he lied to Barbara MacDonald. He told Barbara MacDonald, who'd had a lot of correspondence with Ron Logan, he told her that he was indoors the whole night, like setting up his aquarium for his fish. He's a total liar. So he lied. He got his cousin to lie for him. Actually, he was on the bridge or in the vicinity of the bridge at 2:09. He did go to Lafayette, though, or at least someone did, because there was a till receipt in his house for the fish store, the aquarium store in Lafayette. He did go, but he went later. And then he was out and about in the vicinity of the crime scene just before 8 and then at 10:15 in the evening. But told Barbara MacDonald he was indoors all night sorting out his fish. And then here he is lying to this reporter, lying to his face.
And I didn't get home till approximately 6:30 in the evening. And then the neighbor stopped to ask for information. to look back here for the girl.
Liberty German shot this chilling image of the killer approaching the girls on a hiking trail, and she recorded the killer's voice.
What do you hear on there?
Nothing that I recognize at all. No one. I don't recognize the voice at all.
Stephen asked Ron Logan to repeat those same chilling words. Listen.
Down the hill.
The newly revealed search warrant says Ron Logan's voice.
What do you think? I don't know. I honestly don't think Bridge Guy sounds especially like anyone. But we do know, we absolutely do know that those words, guys down the hill, has been enhanced. So we don't know exactly what was done to make that enhancement. We don't know how much it changed the voice. It could have changed the voice quite a lot. Let's listen to it again, though.
Hill.
The newly revealed search warrant says Ron Logan's voice was not inconsistent, chilling words. Listen.
Down the hill.
The newly revealed search warrant says Ron Logan to repeat those same chilling words. Listen.
Down the hill.
The newly revealed search warrant.
Recognize the voice at all.
Stephen asked Ron Logan to repeat those same chilling words. Listen.
Down the hill.
The newly revealed search warrant says Ron.
I don't know. Anyway, this one is from the 16th of February. So just 2 days after the girls were found, 3 days after the murders. And there is reporters all over the scene. And here they are talking. This is WTHR. Here they are talking to Ron Logan.
Against the beauty of the sunshine and bright blue skies Wednesday, it was still hard for Ron Logan to believe the violence visited upon two young teens just out for a hike on a day off from school.
Who would have thought they'd let their children out to do something special that day, take a trip down, and it turned out a disaster like this?
For 53 years, Logan's lived on the country road near the trail that leads to the Monon High Bridge.
People walk up and down with their children, and yeah, it's quite a nice little trail on the bridge.
Never, though, has Logan seen anything like what he has this week, the search for an eventual discovery of the bodies of Libby German and Abby Williams.
The area that they were in is very hard to get to. I mean, you can't get there unless you walk there. I mean, so somebody would be walking with them or something.
Those are the same.
That's interesting, isn't it? Someone had to be walking with them or something. And the words Reese Davis used, said to him by Ron Logan, that he was walking with the girls, that Ron Logan was walking with the girls. He walked with them. So he's saying that they couldn't have got there. They couldn't have got to that crime scene unless someone was walking with them. Did he just tell on himself? Let's listen again.
Blue skies Wednesday, it was still hard for Ron Logan to believe the violence visited upon two young teens just out for a hike on a day off from school.
Who would have thought they'd let their children out to do something special that day, take a trip down, and it turned out a disaster like this?
For 53 years, Logan's lived on the country road near the trail that leads to the Monon High Bridge.
People walk up and down with their children, and yeah, it's quite a nice little trail on the bridge.
Never, though, has Logan seen anything like what he has this week, the search for an eventual discovery of the bodies of Libby German and Abby Williams.
The area that they were in is very hard to get to. I mean, you can't get there unless you walk there. I mean, so somebody would be walking with them or something.
Those are the same kind of thoughts Marvin.
Someone had to be walking with them or something. Someone had to be walking with them or something. Timestamp on this receipt. Do we have a ping data from Ron Logan confirming being in Lafayette? Is it possible that his cousin was there all alone and provided the receipt to Ron Logan? Yeah, that's possible. All it says in the search warrant is that they found a till receipt that was 521 from Lafayette. But we don't know whether Ron went himself. That's not stated in the search warrant. And There's no phone ping information. This was before the BG was released. No, the BG was released. The picture, so the still of BG was released on February 15th, I think. And then the walking one, where they just put some frames together, that was released in 2019. Somebody had to be walking with them or something. Yeah, said Ron Logan. Yeah. This is another neighbour from the south side. Let's listen to what he said. He's where Brad Weber lives. This guy lives kind of the house behind Brad Weber's. Like, they're quite big, like, areas, but he lives in the area, but on the south side.
And Sandifer keeps mulling over. His daughter used to hike the same trail.
She said, I've seen a couple scruffy-looking guys back in there, but, you know, they never bothered me. They went on their way.
Sandifer is anxious for investigators to identify a suspect.
I'm not really scared. I'm just worried that it would happen again.
That's why he hopes someone knows or saw something on that trail Monday and can lead investigators down the right path soon.
I hope they catch him tonight, and I hope they make him pay.
And with...
Yeah, well, not quite. Not quite tonight. And when they did catch someone, they got the wrong guy. All right, this is also from February 16th, 2017. This is WLFI-TV and another interview with Ron Logan.
With residents, he joins us now with the latest. Cameron?
It's no surprise the town of Delphi is taking this very hard. With less than 3,000 people in the entire community, it's a typical kind of place where everybody knows everybody. But now the town is trying to make the best of it by coming together.
Who'd ever think someone would be murdered in your backyard?
Ron Logan has lived on this property in Delphi for more than 50 years.
I don't even recall any homicides in Delphi. I just don't recall any, but a double homicide. This is the first, as far as I know. I don't. But it's just crazy.
He never would have imagined his property would turn into a murder scene.
It's just terrible. I just can't imagine that. My son, when he was a kid, he and his buddies played in here for all the time. I mean, he was born here. That was a different time, though.
Logan and the rest of the community are deeply hurt for the families involved, and that's exactly why the town is coming together.
We're a small community, and
no problem walking up that hill. He was 77 at the time. No problem walking up that hill.
That was a different time, though.
Logan and the rest of the community are deeply hurt for the families involved, and that's exactly why the town is coming together.
Yeah, it was. It was the Sandifer's camera. Yes, it was. That caught the van. Yes, it was. That's it. It's easy to catch someone who isn't running or hiding, who just happened to call in to say, I was on the trails that day and I didn't see anything apart from 3 girls. And look where we end up. All right, so this is another one from WTHR on February 17th. So just the day after. Who is Sandifer? He is a neighbour who lives on the south side of the bridge. He's the house. So you've got Brad Weber's, which is closest to the bridge on the south side. And then behind that is the Sandifer property. It's like Ian Huntley and so on. Yeah. Ian Huntley went on all the news. Yeah, he did. Bye, broken off dolls. See you later. Yeah, he's standing there at the crime scene giving reporters a guided tour. Like taking the reporters down the trails to the crime scene, to the bridge. He's like being like super helpful. But yet he didn't help with the search. which I find interesting. Didn't help with the search, but when the girls are found, he's there helping everybody. Keeping his little ear to the ground, isn't he? Listening in, isn't he? That's what I think he was doing. All right, this is February 17th, 2017. And guess how many people are muted? Am I really? Oh, I know why. Sorry, guys. I'm not shared the right screen. All right, we'll play that again. Yeah, you can't go through an entire live stream without me at least doing one thing wrong. You have to share the right screen. You have to share the right screen to get the sound. I'm not frozen. It's just me being an idiot. Me being a clown. All right, we'll play that again. So this is Ron Logan. Report is February 17th, and then I'm going to let it play because it's interesting at the end. Right, they've got Bridge Guy. Like they released Bridge Guy on the 15th, which would have been the Wednesday. So they show Bridge Guy and how that was spoken about in the news. So we'll play this whole thing.
Search for clues. Some folks who live near the crime scene, they fear that their road will never be the same. The crime scene Thursday, a place property owner Ron Logan knows well, but never thought he would know for something so tragic.
I can't really wrap my emotions around it. It's so mind-boggling. I haven't really caught up. It hasn't caught up with me yet.
Up and down the hills, across that bank now circled with crime tape, his son grew up playing here.
Never in your wildest dreams do you think if he comes down here to play, he won't come back home.
He and his friends grieve for the victims, Liberty German and Abigail Williams, both 13.
That's why we come back. He goes, I want to show you what it looks like. You couldn't carry someone up and down these hills, or it's hard to walk by yourself.
We've been able to identify almost everybody else that's been on that trail, and this gentleman has not been identified, and we want to know what he saw, what he might have seen on the trail. Did he see somebody else that maybe some of the others didn't see?
The sheriff's department says the trail photos of a man released Wednesday have brought in about 200 tips, and they're checking every one of them, they say. Police want to...
And guess who some of those tips were? Ron Logan. I think it was something like 15 people rang in that it was Ron Logan.
Talk to the man because he was on the trail about the same time as the victims.
I think they feel confident that we're going to get this guy or guys that were involved in this, and I think they're feeling confident that it's going to happen sooner than later.
Back at the crime scene, hoping for answers.
This place is never going to be the same. It'll never be the same, will it?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody will be. They'll be very vigilant now from here on out when they come down here.
All right, that's David McAnally tonight in Delphi. Now, here's another look at the man police are so desperate to talk to. Again, they have not said he's a suspect or a person of interest. Instead, investigators believe that he is the only person they haven't identified who was in the area at that time. Now, if you were in the area that day or you know anything that could help solve this case, police do want to hear from you. They've set up a new tip line for information about the murders of Libby and Abby. All tips should be called into that number, and you can remain anonymous. You see it right there on your screen. The number is 844-459-5786.
And that is what inspired Kathy Allen to say to Rick, you were on the trails. Go and tell them what you saw. If Rick Allen hadn't have rung that tip line, he wouldn't be in prison. They would never, ever have known that he existed. Yeah, Ron Logan had a whole bunch of guns that he shouldn't have had. When the FBI searched his property on, I think it was the 6th of March, just for the weapons. And then they came back on the 17th to search the entire property for basically everything. Basically everything. So he had a whole bunch of guns. He did like his weapons. But so did Rick. Rick had some guns. Rick had some knives. It's not unusual in that area, I don't think, to be into like hunting and stuff like that. Like Ron Logan was a hunter. He liked hunting. Oh yeah, he shouldn't have had the firearms. Yeah, he shouldn't have had them because he was a felon. Yeah. He shouldn't have had them. So Ron Logan had all these firearms illegally. Unlike Rick Allen, whose firearms were legally bought and he had a right to have them. So there you go. All right, so those I just thought they were interesting. There's quite a few little clips with Ron Logan in them because he was doing the rounds. He was enjoying his 15 minutes of fame. And you might say, well, okay, he was the property owner and maybe he felt obliged to, make sure that people walked around there safely and, he was just being helpful. Okay, I can buy that. But why was he not being helpful in the search? Given that it was his property and he was made aware that 2 girls were missing, why did he not search his property? Why was it left to other people to search his property? Yeah. It's just things that make you go, But, put these little things together. Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen a different way so that I can show you. Thank you, Robin, for the $4.99. Grew up in a little town. Bodies turned up at a neighbour's house. He was the cause. Oh, scary. Well, thank you so much for the super chat. That's very kind of you. And we got some gifted memberships as well while that was playing. Thank you, Kimberly, for the 5 gifted memberships. Thank you so much. We got Robin. We got Robert. Incognito potato. What? That's a mouthful. Noodles and the unnamed true crime channel. Thank you so much, Kimberly, and welcome you 5. You get a month's free membership, courtesy of Kimberly. I think that was it. I think I said thank you to the other one that came in. Let me just scroll back. Yes, I did. Okay. We're up to date now with donations. We're up to date. All right, let me share my screen a different way so that I can show the map and stuff. Okay, entire screen. Boom. All right. So we got the map here. Oh, and we got some more gifted memberships. Hold on. Who've we got? Barbie's 2 Blitz. Thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. We've got Kelly. We've got Broom McNeil. we've got David, Jennifer, and Shannon. Thank you, Barbie, and welcome you 5. Monthly membership courtesy of Barbie. All right, this is the map here. I've been adding these pins for ages. The Sandifer's property is down here. So that's the Weber property there. And then Sandifer's is down here. And it's their camera that caught Brad Weber's van driving along here. You see Brad Webber? I actually see it here. Like the camera's like facing this way. So you see it passing this and driving up here, and it kind of, you like lose it. So it's their property that was shown on the that the van was shown on the camera again, which wasn't shown at the trial. Again, why was that not shown at the trial? Because it didn't fit the state's narrative. Because that camera caught Brad Weber's van going by at 2:44. So it was here at 2:44. So it's got to get up here. Then this is the private drive that goes under the bridge and then to here. And then Brad Weber's phone starts pinging at his house at 2:50. So makes sense, doesn't it? 2:44 here, gets home, probably gets his phone out. The activity on his phone creates a ping. It pings at 2:50. So it's all consistent, but unfortunately, it doesn't fit the state's timeline. It doesn't fit the state's timeline, does it? No. No. All right. So we're going to come back to this map frequently, as we always do. This map has been proved invaluable to these live streams. And I keep updating it with new stuff. All right. This is just a rough and ready place where the crime scene is. It's in this general vicinity. The pin, though, the crime scene pin is actually from the coordinates from the Ron Logan search warrant. But when you see the crime scene tape, it's, you know, spanning several yards. So crime scene's here. Morning High Bridge. BG video 213 into 214, 43-second video taken at the south end. Until I see that full 43 seconds, I'm going to be very non-committal about how much of in evidence that enhanced version should be. Because we know that the BG image was massively enhanced. People who were in the courtroom who saw the full 43 seconds do not see BG like close up. You know, he's in the distance. So they've had to do some, you know, jiggery pokery to enhance it to such an extent that we've got what we've got. And same with the voice. Now, I understand that, you know, Libby's moving around. She's probably put the phone in her pocket. She's done, you know, she's not, you know, stabilized the phone in any way. So I can understand that it's going to be shaky and that the sound is going to be a bit off and that maybe some enhancement was necessary. But it begs the question, surely the jury should only have seen what Libby actually recorded. Isn't that the case? That Libby recorded a 43-second video. That's the evidence. That's the evidence. Okay. Okay. Actually, I'll tell you what, and I know I'm in a different country, but when I was a juror on a murder trial, they had a whole bunch of CCTV from the area, and they played the CCTV as it was filmed from the cameras. There was no enhancements. There was no zooming in. It was the CCTV as was captured from the cameras. That's the evidence. Now, when we went back to the deliberation room, they gave us a laptop so we could view the CCTV on a laptop, and that enabled you to, you know, zoom in a little bit, but it just made the, you know, screen all pixelated and stuff, as zooming in does. But no, there was no enhancements. That was the CCTV in evidence has been collected during the investigation. Now, look, I know I'm in a different country. Maybe the rules are different in Indiana. I don't know. But the 43-second BG video is the evidence. But anyway. And then we've got all this stuff, all these timings from the PCA, you know, about when Betsy Blair appeared and where she passed by and this, that, and the third. But we absolutely know that this isn't the timeline. This isn't the timeline that's important. This is the timeline that the Rick Allen is guilty crowd will recite. You know, some people from the Rick Allen is guilty crowd know all these times off by heart. But that's not the timeline that you need to be concerning yourself with. Why? Because none of the witnesses actually described seeing Richard Allen. Sarah Carbo, who saw the muddy and bloody man, what was that, 357? Yeah, 357, is an absolute liar. I don't think anybody took her testimony seriously. Betsy Blair, who would have been a great witness if the defence had been allowed to, you know, cross-examine her properly. She saw a young man. She saw a man in his 20s with dark brown poofy hair around 2 o'clock on the bridge. So who was he? Because a young man with dark brown poofy hair doesn't fit Rick Allen's description. But also it doesn't fit Ron Logan's description either. Neither of them were young men with dark poofy hair. And then the 3 girls that Rick Allen said he saw, well, there was actually 4 girls. Not 3, 4 girls. And none of them described Rick Allen. One of them said he was a tall guy. One of them, who was 5'7", said he was taller than her, maybe about 5'10". The first thing you'd notice about Rick Allen is that he's very short. For a man, he's very short, like between 5'4" and 5'5". It's the first thing you'd notice about a man that short. I know because my dad was a short guy. My dad was only like 5'5" and maybe even 5'4", but he was small for a man. Like my mother was 5'7", and she was dead paranoid that people would think it was strange that she was tall and he was short. He didn't care, but she did. like when they were photographed together, she used to like kind of like do this weird knee bendy thing. Like she was pretending to be standing, but actually she was bending her knee so she looked shorter. It's bizarre that my mother was paranoid about it. Anyhow, it's the first thing you notice about a guy that is short. So if they'd have all said, oh, it was a really short guy, middle-aged guy, really short, don't really remember very much else about him, I would have been a little bit leery then. I would have been, oh, okay. How many other small guys were out there that day? You know what I mean? Anyhow, this that I'm going to show you now is the timeline, the actual timeline that you need to take note of. Oh, and also I will say that Rick Allen in 2022, in his interrogation with Jerry Holman, said that he was there on the trails between about 12 and 1:30. And the defense at the trial said they had evidence to show that Rick Allen had left the scene, had left the area by 1:45. But no one's going to believe the defense, are they? No. So the reason why no one could describe Rick Allen is because Rick Allen wasn't there when these people were. But then you're going to say, well, why did no one see Ron Logan? Why did no one see Ron Logan? Well, Ron Logan didn't need to go walking on the trails. To get to the bridge, right, this is Ron Logan's house up here. This is all Ron Logan's land. I don't know where the boundary is, but this is all Ron Logan's land here. So the girls were found on his land. This is his land. This is where he lives. So all he has to do is walk down the hill to the crime scene. All he has to do is walk down the hill and go around this bend to get to the bridge. So he doesn't need to park at the CPS building. This is a CPS building here. This is the map from April 2017. So this takes us back in time to show us that the CPS building was there in 2017. It's not there anymore. That's the CPS building that everyone talks about right there. The CPS building. But, you know, they said, the state said that Rick Allen drove along here, west, was driving west, caught on the Who's Your Horizontal camera at like 126, 127, and then parks at the old CPS building, but no one saw his car. No one saw a black Ford Focus. We can't prove that it was Rick Allen's black Ford Focus that was caught on this camera. We can't even say that it was a Ford Focus. We could say it was another car that looked similar to a Ford Focus, because Ford Focuses are fairly nondescript cars. However, what they don't look like are smart cars or 1965 Mercury Comets, because that's what the witnesses saw parked at the old CPS building. Betsy Blair said that she did see a car parked at the old CPS building, but it looked like a 1965 Comet, and she knows what they look like because her dad used to have one. Somebody else said they saw what looked like a purple PT Cruiser. Somebody else said they thought it was a smart car. None of them saw a Ford Focus. So no one saw anybody who matched the description of Rick Allen, and no one saw a car that matched the description of his vehicle. So this isn't the timeline that you need to be concerning yourself with. This is the timeline that you should be concerning yourself with. This is the timeline that you should be concerning yourself with. This is the state's timeline. Based on the analysis of Libby's phone, which was an iPhone 6S. What do I need to point out? Michelle needs to point that out. Rick parked on the other side, the west side of who's you? That was the west side. You're talking about? He was driving west. Are you saying he didn't park at the CPS building at all? Yeah, we know. He parked where he normally parks when he goes to the trials. All right. He parked. So that's the CPS building there. He parked around here. Like there's a car park there, an actual parking lot there. And this is where Rick Allen said he actually parked, around this area. I think that's what you're getting at. Rather than here. Because Rick visited his mother in the morning. So whether he came from his mother's house or whether he came from his own house, he'd have to have taken a very strange detour to be driving west on this road to go and park here. He'd be coming in this way. So it makes more sense for him to park at his usual spot. But none of that was mentioned at trial, was it? No. Okay, cool. All right. So, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. All right, so this is the timeline that you people who believe Rick Allen's guilty, based on the information that was stated at trial, this is the timeline that you need to concern yourself with, because at the trial, no one identified Rick Allen. No one. Not one witness identified Rick Allen. The pic is evidence of my exact height and feature. The height, Carol, the height of Bridge Guy, as was taken on the Monon High Bridge, where did you see height mentioned? Where did you see the evidence presented about BG's height? Where is that? Where is that? Yeah. The FBI were told to leave. They had a disagreement with local law enforcement and the Indiana State Police. They were given the marching orders. So, Carol, look, Carol, can you please provide me the source? Now, it could be the PCA, it could be one of the pre-trial motions, or it could be testimony from the trial that stated the exact height of Bridge Guy. Thank you, Muchley. If you could provide that source, that would be great. All right, cool. So this is the timeline that the state presented as evidence that Rick Allen actually committed the murders. This is the timeline that you need to be concerning yourselves with. Not the silly, oh, such a person saw a purple PT Cruiser, or such a person saw a man wearing jeans, or such a person saw someone who was 20 years younger and much more bushy in the old, hair department than either Rick Allen or Ron Logan. Why? Because Rick Allen wasn't there, and Ron Logan had no need to be on the trails. Ron Logan had no need whatsoever to be on those trails to be seen by anybody, because it's his own land and he has his, he can just walk down the hill from his house. Okay, so this is the timeline based on Libby's phone that the state put forward at the trial. How tall is Voorhees? I don't know which one of the girls. I don't know which one of the girls said that she was 5'7", but one of the girls said she was 5'7", and he was taller than her, maybe about 5'10". But I don't know which girl said that. It might have been Rayleigh Voorhees, or it might have been the other one. All right, so this is the evidence. This is the evidence that the state put forward to support Rick Allen's murder of the girls. If you remember, they said that they believed, and again, this is just the state's theory, but to have a theory that is sufficient to convict someone of murder, double murder of 2 children, with a subsequent sentence of 130 years, you have to have darn good evidence to support your theory. So this is the supposed darn good evidence that supports their theory. They said that Rick Allen, in his confession to Monica Waller, the psychologist who was a Delphi fangirl, which, that interview where Rick Allen confessed all of this stuff to Monica Waller. Oh, surprise, surprise, that wasn't recorded. And guess what? Monica Waller shredded her notes. So the notes she took, shredded. The recording of said interview, not done, even though, let me get this straight, even though every other waking moment of Rick Allen's life in Westville was recorded. There was a video on him 24/7 in his cell. Watching him eating, sleeping, having a shit, all of the stuff that we do every day. But you don't have a camera on you 24/7, do you? The vast majority of prisoners everywhere don't have a camera on them 24/7 while they're in their cell. But Rick Allen did. Even when he was walking from point A to point B, if they had to, take him to the medical place, they walked along with a video camera. When he was having meetings with his attorneys, the guards set up a video camera so they could film him. So every waking and sleeping moment of Rick Allen's life in Westville was recorded, except, this particular interview with Monica Waller, where he confesses. How convenient. How convenient is that? So Monica Waller, this is Monica Waller's theory of what Rick Allen did, not what Rick Allen said he did. This is Monica Waller, this is hearsay. This is Monica Waller's testimony about what Rick Allen said based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever. No evidence whatsoever. So he said to her, right, according to Monica Waller, that he intended to essay the girls, but he got disturbed. He got disturbed by Brad Webber coming home. This is Brad Webber here in his van. And at the trial, you heard that Brad Webber left Lafayette, which is about half an hour away, at 2:02. Left his job, right? 2:02. And he arrived at actually his mother's house, but at the Webber property between 2:27 and 2:30. That's what you heard at the trial. Well, you didn't hear it. You know, you didn't hear it. I didn't hear it because, oh, guess what? Cameras weren't allowed in. Live tweeting wasn't even allowed. So we had to rely on the few people who were actually there in the courtroom. So a few reporters, a few YouTubers. So I'm not going to play it, but this is Bob from Defense Diaries. That's his clip there. That's just him describing this phone data that I'm going to talk you through in a minute. So Rick Allen, right? So 213 BG video into 214. He takes the girls down the hill, you know, guys down the hill. This is all according to Monica Waller, right? Are planning to essay them. Then between 2:27 and 2:30, Brad Webber drives by in his van, disturbs them. So Rick Allen panics, walks the girls a quarter of a mile across the woods, across the creek, and then up the other side to the crime scene and murders them there by 2:32, because that's when the phone stops moving. All that's done by 2:32 because that's when the phone stops moving. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Oh, I've got chasing in the chat. I watched your podcast, your episode 1 of your Delphi podcast. I watched it last night. Very good. I'm looking forward to episode 2. It'll be very good. I'm looking forward to that series. All right, so this is supposedly evidence in support of Rick Allen's confession via Monica Waller. All right. You've heard me talk about this a lot, but this is the real timeline. If this timeline does not work for Rick Allen, then Rick Allen could not have committed the murders, at least in the way that the state has presented it to the jury. All right, so 131 to 208, they walk about 700 meters. And it's all in meters because Celebrite, the extraction software that extracts all the data from phones, it's done in meters. So I'm going to show you Celebrite's website in a minute. So 208 takes you to about a third of the way across the bridge. That's pretty accurate, as you'll see with the measurements when I show you. And then between 208 and 218, a further 414 meters. Then between 218 and 225, there's no movement on the phone. So that's 7 minutes. So the state said that's when Rick Allen was essaying or trying to essay the girls. So making them undress, etc., etc. All right, cool. So at this point, all right, sometime here, Brad Webber's van arrives. So Brad Webber's van had to arrive here, really. So Brad Webber's van had to arrive here because he then panics and rushes the girls across the woods, across the creek, up to the crime scene, which is this is bizarre. This is bizarre. A further 50 meters walked, and that's 68 steps between 225 and 231. And then between 231 and 232, the phone registers 2 floors climbed, which is approximately 20 feet. Here's the problem with this. Here's the problem. Because there's no way, if at the south side of the bridge, which is what the state said, right? This is what the state said. If they were still at the south side of the bridge, and then they're disturbed, Rick Allen's disturbed by Brad Webber driving by in his van, and rushes them over to the other side of the creek and kills them, all in 50 meters. And where's the 20-foot rise? No, doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. And that, my friends, is why the theory that the state put forward as to Rick Allen's guilt, that the jury bought, is bogus. That's why. That's the timeline that the state put forward to explain why Rick Allen's confession to Monica Waller was true. And it makes zero sense. Thank you, Storms, for the $4.99. It's sus. Oh, suspicious. Her Grey Hughes already knew what Waller was going to say before anyone else. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Grey Hughes announced in, I think it was it March of 2024, that there was going to be this big shock. Yeah, I've got a screenshot from his chat. I'm not going to dig it out right now, but I have shown it in a previous live stream. All right. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. All right. So 131 to 208. We're going to walk 700 meters. We're going to walk 700 meters. Now, they were only dropped off, according to the state, they were dropped off at around 148 because Kelsey's car is caught on the Hoosier Harvester camera here at 149. So 147, 148, they're caught here. So the phone did some movements, though, before that. So I'm assuming that that would have been her picking up the phone and then, you know, the drive wouldn't have registered anything. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good to take us to about a third of the way across the bridge. It's around 600 meters. All right, let me show you. And this is just rough and ready because my hand shakes and, you know, people don't walk in an absolute straight line and, you know, they may have been deviating a little bit. But we're going to go from here, Mia's Farm entrance, and we're going to walk down this trail. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. I need path. All right, clear that. We need path so that we can actually walk. So we're going to walk here to about a third of the way across the bridge. And it's about 600 meters. All right. So Libby's phone measured 700 meters. It's not exact. There's going to be some movement of her leaving her house, getting in the car, blah, blah, blah. But it's reasonably accurate. And then between 2:14 and 2:18, the phone, just let me get rid of that a second and I can move it up. So between 2:08 and 2:18, so 2:08 and 2:18, they walk, Libby's phone walks a further 414 meters. All right. So where does that take us? Well, 414 meters. A meter is 39 inches, by the way. All right. So we'll go to there. So we know that they were at the south side by 2:18. So that's a further 179 meters. And every time I do this, I get a slightly different measurement, but that's okay. So we've now got 179 meters in the bag. Right, so we can do 414 minus 179 equals 235. We've got 235 meters to spare. However, the phone doesn't move again. The phone doesn't move again for 7 minutes. And then after they panic, and Rick Allen's in a state of panic because this van passes by and he thinks that he's going to get caught, and he hightails it across the creek and kills them by 2:32. The phone actually only registers 50 meters. Okay, so we've got a shortfall here. We've got 235 meters that should have been walked by 2:18. There's a shortfall of 235 meters. But then we've got to get all the way from here to here in just 50 meters. How does that work? How does that work? Because if we go down here, so down the hill, right, let me clear that. Because we go down the hill, which takes you to the private drive, which is a short hill, and then we go all the way down the hill, and then we're going to walk across here. We're going to cross the creek and to the crime scene. Well, that's 190 meters. That's 190 meters. But the state's told the jury that they only walked 50 meters. By the time, the essay was disturbed, and remember, by this point, when the phone's not moving, they're still on the south side of the creek. And it's 190 meters, like in the shortest route, going in a straight line. It's 190 meters, not 50 meters. But yet we've got 235 meters that should have been walked before the phone stopped moving. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. And for that reason, and that reason alone, the jury should have come back with a not guilty verdict, because that alone provides the reasonable doubt required. In my opinion, this exonerates Rick Allen. This phone data exonerates Rick Allen, at least based on what the state says he confessed to. But at the very least, it should be the reasonable doubt. But the jury couldn't put this together. The jury didn't see this. But that on its own is a problem for the state, a fundamental flaw in the state's argument. That's the timeline that breaks the case for the state. It absolutely breaks it, shatters it into a million tiny pieces. Then they have to have done that all in, well, between five and possibly only 2 minutes. He had to have taken them down the hill, across the creek, to the crime scene, and murdered them by 2:32, because that's when the phone stops moving. Nonsense. Absolute, complete and total nonsense. You can't possibly walk from here to here. You do not rise by 20 feet. And an iPhone does not record going down a hill as a flight climbed. It doesn't. A flight climbed is a flight climbed, i.e. going up. So when people said, oh, those flights, that 2 flights is them going down the hill. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. But neither is it going up the bank this side, because this bank doesn't rise 20 feet at this area, which is, if they crossed the creek, that had to be the area where they crossed. Because if you go up here, this is a steep banking. So would he really take them across here, go across here where the creek's deeper, and then go up this steep banking and then walk them all the way to the crime scene? No. If they went this way to the crime scene, they're going to cross here where it's the shallowest and where the bank is, it's like a plateau. It's a flood. This is a floodplain, this area. All right. So if you look here at elevation change, if you're in the middle of the creek, it's 168 meters above sea level. By the time you get to the crime scene, it's only risen. Crime scene rises. Crime scene here, it rises by between 2 and 3 meters. So that's between 6 and 6.5 and 9.5 feet, roughly. Not 20 feet. It only starts to do a sharp rise when we get past the crime scene, past the plateau, to go up the hill towards Ron Logan's place, which is up here. This then has a rapid rise. Like look at the elevation change at the bottom there. So we go from the crime scene, 170 meters above sea level, and then we keep going. 71, 72, 74, 75, 76, 82, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. By the time you get to the top of the hill, and 91 is still going. 92, all right, there we go. That's the top. So it rises 22 meters. It rises 22 meters just going from the crime scene to here. And that's the hill that we see Ron Logan climbing. Let me see if he's climbing on this one. No, doesn't climb on that one. There he is. There he's going. What? Watch him. That's the hill that we've just measured. Right there. So he's standing there at the crime scene, and now he's walking up the hill to his house. That's that steep part of the hill. But the crime scene is actually only just above the level of the creek bank. Because you've like got this flood plateau kind of thing. All right. But how does this, you know, if we're saying that this timeline, Libby's phone data, completely exculpates Rick Allen, what about Ron Logan's confession? Because if Ron Logan's confession is true, how does it fit with Libby's phone data? Okay. Well, this is why I went and did an experiment the other day. So if you saw my video from a couple of days ago, I have an iPhone 6S, which is the same model that Libby had. So I took my iPhone 6S out. I've done this before. I've done experiments with the iPhone 6S before in relation to this case, because I just happen to have an old iPhone 6S. I've not bought it especially. I just happen to have it, and it's never, it hasn't been updated. Like the iOS version hasn't been updated since probably 2018. Because I think I stopped using it in like 2018. Got a different phone. All right, so it's the same model, and it's probably going to have either the same iOS or just one version more advanced than Libby's. But the Apple Health app will have been exactly the same as that of Libby's. All right. So the other day I went out and did an experiment in the woods with my iPhone 6S, walking up a hill and then walking up some steps and stuff. And when your phone records a flight climb, there's a delay on it. Like 2 to 3 minutes delay before it tells you, before it actually clocks up a flight climbed. And it's the same for steps, there's a delay. So I was thinking, well, is there a delay at just the user level, or is there also a delay at the metadata level? Because there's a big difference here. Because the reason why I got into thinking about this was because of this. There's 2 flights climbed between 2:31 and 2:32. I can't reconcile, and I still can't reconcile with Ron Logan's confession either. So I was wondering whether this 2:31 to 2:32 happened a little bit before, and this is the data that were presented at trial, but that actually happened a few minutes before, which makes more sense in relation to Ron Logan's confession. Like, it would make more sense for those floors climbed to have come before the 50 meters. But and my assessment of how long it took my iPhone 6S to register a flight climbed, like going up a hill or going up steps, did seem to bear out that it was like 2, 3. One time it was even longer than that. It was a few minutes before it recorded it on the phone. And that made sense to me. However, I went to Celebrite's website and I found this. I couldn't find one. I'm sure they will have one. These are like little blogs. I'm sure they will have that information, but I wanted this what Celebrite extracted from iPhone 6S's, or what it can extract via the Apple Health app on the iPhone 6S specifically. But I got this, which was interesting, and this is about the Apple Watch. So it was looking at things like location data, heart rate, steps, distance, flights climbed, etc. In the Apple Watch. So we don't need to concern ourselves with all of, and by the way, this is from 2019. So this would have been an older version of the Apple Watch than what's existing now. So Celebrite could extract a bunch of stuff from the Apple Watch. And there's a couple of things that I thought was just interesting to point out. That it says here, actually, I'm going to go right down to the bottom and show you this. This person did a little experiment. So testing. So remember, this is 2019. So this is an older version of the iPhone and an older version of the Apple Watch than we have now. But I just thought this was interesting. But while wearing both the iPhone and the Apple Watch, I walked on a treadmill for about 20 minutes and then went outside and walked about 400 meters. The 2 activities were recorded on the Health app. The first data activity stream was from the synced iPhone and the second from the watch. The iPhone data lumped the treadmill and 400 meters walking activity as one activity. So the iPhone just recorded it as continuous activity. It didn't notice that there was a, let's say a stepping off of the treadmill, changing steps, blah, 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 blah. It just recorded it as one constant activity. Whereas the Apple Watch was able to distinguish between the 2 different activities. It was way more specific. Way more specific. And then when testing only the phone, Well, only the iPhone in my pocket, I walked and then went for a bike ride for 3 kilometers, which is a kilometer is about 0.6 miles. I then stopped and kept walking. Only my walking data was recorded, but not my bike ride activity. Interesting. All right. It's interesting that in 2019, the iPhone's recording of activity it left a lot to be desired. Let's put it that way. And it seemed to be underestimating activity. It just underestimated. It just left out an entire bike ride, and it didn't register when the walking activity changed, whereas the Apple Watch of the same kind of time genre did. So it got me thinking about Libby's phone, and exactly the same happened to me the other day, because along with recording my steps and recording my flights climbed on my iPhone 6, I also had my current phone with me because I was recording with that phone, which is an iPhone 12. And the iPhone 12 recorded that I'd walked about 4,000 steps by the time I got home. Whereas the iPhone 6S, it only recorded about 1,700 steps. So that's a big difference, 4,000 steps versus 1,700 steps. So, you know, is it that the iPhone 6S is underestimating the amount I walked because of its lack of specificity? Or was my iPhone 12 overestimating? Well, what it seems is that iPhones generally of this time, this is 2019, were underestimating activity. So it's very possible that Libby's phone was underestimating activity. By how much, we don't know. Probably not that much, but there would have been some underestimation. But it still doesn't answer my question as to whether the flights climbed is recorded on the phone, like the metadata of the phone, at the exact time that activity starts, compared with what the user sees. And it does appear, like reading between the lines, it does appear that the metadata that is downloaded from Celebrite when data is extracted is an exact start time. There's even a section on flights climbed, if we can find it. It's only a small section on flights climbed. So how start location artifacts are generated and stored. So start location artifacts are not generated natively by the health app. They can come from apps that sync with the health app, with the health database. So you've got the activity app, which syncs with workout. So according to my test, the workout app won't sync start locations unless the activity app is installed on the phone. During the Apple Watch setup, all 3 apps are either downloaded or already present and become synced with one another. And that will also be the same with the iPhone, because these are all native apps. These are all things that you don't have to download onto your phone. These are things that come with your phone. You actually can't delete the Apple Health app. But it seems that start times for activities are exact, like even to the second that they're exact. So I'm assuming then that this data, 231 to 232, of these 2 flights climbed is accurate. That is accurate. Which leaves me with a problem for the Ron Logan confession. Here's why. Here's why. No, I don't think it's insurmountable. I don't think it completely excludes him. Like this timeline that the state expected the jury to believe, which they did, completely exonerates Richard Allen. I don't think we can say that about Ron Logan, though. But let's imagine what Ron Logan said. So Ron Logan was in the vicinity of the bridge at 2:09. We know the girls were on the bridge at 2:09. So we can go to here with our 600 meters. All right. We've already measured that, about 600 meters. But then there's 414 meters that we have to account for. It could be a bit further. Now, 414 meters, taken all at once, because remember, Ron Logan said he was walking with them. He was walking with them. So 414 meters. If we go all the way down here and then across here to the crime scene, 375 meters to walk across that way. So we're still short. We're still short. So what if Ron Logan didn't go this way? What if Ron Logan walked them this way? So maybe they didn't get right to the end of the bridge. Maybe they turned round. Maybe they came back this way. Oops, I took a massive deviation then. I fell off the bridge then. Because if you come off the bridge, there is a trail that goes up here. And then it goes down the hill here. But then again, that's 777 meters. Now, bear in mind, I've deviated a little bit. It's not quite that much. So that's way more than 414 meters. So that's a problem. Maybe we don't walk that far. Maybe we don't walk to the crime scene right there. Maybe we go from a third of the way across the bridge to here. Then we walk back. And then maybe we only walk up to, say, here. That's still 600 meters. So if we walk back this way, it adds on too much. Because remember, we've only got 414 meters to play with. Now, is that an underestimate? Probably. But how much of an underestimate, we don't know. What if the phone wasn't reading steps? There you go. There's an underestimation. If there's an underestimation, we don't know how much by. And we also don't know if BG was here. We're only assuming that the BG video was taken here. What if it wasn't? What if the BG video was taken up here? Then the girls wouldn't have had to walk all the way down here to walk all the way back. And unless we see that 43-second video and actually see what was on Libby's phone, I'm very leery about believing that the girls were here at 2:13. So what if we go from here and then we start walking back before, and then we walk this way along this trail? See, we still get to, we're not even close. We're not even close to Ron Logan's house by the time we've walked too far. So I have to conclude that they didn't go back this way if what Ron Logan is saying is true, that he murdered them. That Libby's phone data only makes sense if you go this way. It is the shortest, by a long shot. It's the shortest route back to Ron Logan's house. So you cross the creek, go past the crime scene, and then go back up. So that's 421 meters, right? What if they get to about here? And this is where they start going up the hill. This is important. This is where we start going up the hill. And then we get the phone stopping for 7 minutes. The phone stops for 7 minutes because Libby doesn't want to go any further. Libby doesn't want to go any further. She gets paranoid and an argument ensues. So maybe they stand around for 7 minutes, therefore the phone isn't moving, with Ron Logan trying to be nice to them, to try to coax them to go up the hill to his house. And Libby is saying, no, no, no. And Abby is saying, yeah, I want to go and see the horses. But then Libby freaks out and punches him in the nose. And there's a fight. So then we get her going 50 meters in the other direction. So 50 meters in the other direction, let's clear this. 50 meters in the other direction, let's start about here, takes us, oops, not even recording here. Right. 50 meters in the other direction, so what were we about there, takes us roughly to the crime scene. They had to be a bit further up the hill. So let's imagine they're partly up this hill. They stop for 7 minutes because Ron Logan's trying to persuade them to go up the hill to see his animals. Libby says no. Abby's saying yes. Then Libby freaks out, punches him in the nose. She tries to run away, let's say, and comes back down the hill. And there's your 50 meters. There's your 50 meters. He chases her, slits her throat. She staggers for a short distance and dies. And then whatever he does to Abby at some point later, I don't know. Maybe he takes Abby, he leaves Libby there with her phone and takes Abby back to his house. But what I can't reconcile, everything else can be reconciled. Everything else can be reconciled. There's 700 meters, the 414 meters, as long as they go this way, not back this way, that's too long. They go back this way. Then they stop partway up the hill. They stop partway up the hill, which is when the phone stops, and then 50 meters as Libby's running away. And remember, this is only rough. My measurements are only rough, plus the iPhone's measurement is only rough as well. So there's already 2 bits of potential errors built into this into this explanation, but still. It makes sense. It makes way more sense than the state's theory of how Rick Allen committed the murders. However, this is still the problem for me. That Libby climbing the hill had to have happened before this 50 meters. That had to have happened before, because they get partway up the hill. They get partway up the hill before they stop. And Libby says, no, I'm not going any further. And then the 50 meters is her running back. Running back the way she came. But climbing that hill would have added at least 2 flights. It absolutely would. Because if you look at the elevation change, let's say from here, the plateau, 171 meters, take it up to there, you've risen 10 meters. I mean, it should have added more flights. 10 meters is 30 feet. So it should have added another flight. But anyway, it didn't. So them going partway up that hill makes absolute sense with that phone data. It's just the time. It's just the time that doesn't make sense. Now, look, this has come from the state's timeline. Is it possible the state got it wrong? And that came here? Or even here? Yeah. The state got it wrong? Or the state just, did some jiggery pokery and put that there because it made more sense to be there? And they've just lied? Or is the reporting of it wrong? So the people in the courtroom reported it wrong. I don't think that's the case because several people reported the same figures. Bob, Andrea, Lawyer Lee, and then some reporters from the mainstream media all reported this timeline. So I don't think the people who were reporting from the courtroom got it wrong. Is it possible that there was an inaccuracy of Cecil reporting it to the state? Possible. Is it possible that that they saw this flight's climbed here and thought, oh no, that doesn't work, let's put it at the end? Yes. I don't put anything past the state. But it absolutely does make sense that they got partway up the hill before Libby freaked out and started to run the other way, except for this. So whilst it completely excludes Rick Allen, because it makes no sense based on, Rick Allen's supposed confession to Monica Waller and what the state said happened to the jury, makes no sense. None of it. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And that doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense. After 208, none of it makes sense based on the state's reciting of Rick Allen's confession. In Ron Logan's confession, it makes sense, except this. This had to have come earlier. That's just all my opinion. And there's still some work to do. So I think this excludes Rick Allen, doesn't exclude Ron Logan, though. But there does have to be an explanation for that. But this is the timeline that you guys who think Rick Allen is guilty need to get to grips with. Not the timeline that is, Betsy Blair saw a man at 2 o'clock and the girls were passing by at 1:40, whatever. No. That's not the timeline that you need to be concerned about. This is the timeline that you need to be concerned about. This is the timeline that you have to actually explain in relation to Rick Allen's confession. The rest of the nonsense that has been reported all the way back since the PCA was released is irrelevant because none of those witnesses saw Rick Allen or his vehicle. So you can throw all of that out. None of that's relevant. No one saw Rick Allen. Rick Allen himself in 2022 said he left by 1:30. Left about 1:30. The defense said he was out of the area by 1:45. So maybe that's getting back to his vehicle and then driving away. And then by the time Kathy got home from work, Rick's asleep on the couch. Would you be asleep on the couch if you just committed a double murder of 2 little girls? I don't think so. You'd be washing your car. You'd be, scrubbing your clothes. You'd be doing something quite frenetic because you'd be thinking, oh shit, what have I done? You wouldn't be sleeping unless you've done it that many times that you were just like it was just second nature to you. Then you might be sleeping. But for somebody who's never even committed a crime before, I don't think you would have been sleeping. Anyhow, there you go. That's where we're at. So we got to wait to see what happens next in relation to this motion to correct errors. Wait and see what the state comes back with. And then we'll wait and see what Judge Gould comes back with. I want to do another video about the van. The van cracks me up. The van cracks me up. I'm not going to do it today though. But we're gonna talk about the van again. Because Brad Webber lied. Potentially twice. Brad Webber lied twice. Potentially. All right, guys. Thank you all for joining me. I'm going to call it a day there. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you very soon. Thank you, as always, to the mods. Thank you to those that donated earlier on in the live stream. Welcome to the new members, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.